Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, Beautiful You. I'm your host, Avantika. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Ally Loyns. She is not only a Canadian poet, but also a musician and a dedicated advocate for those navigating borderline personality disorder. Her debut work, A Generation of Sunflowers, and her second book, Bloom, not only offers profound insights into healing and self discovery, but also her personal and introspective poetic collection serves readers as a navigation to experience the complexities of humans. It humanizes the entire experience of people living with BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. Ally's impact extends far beyond the pages of her books. She has been recognized in Deputy Library, literally magazine's first edition, human typewriters from around the world, solidifying her position as a global voice for mental health advocacy. It is an honor and a privilege to have her on the podcast. You guys know I advocate for therapy all the time. Beautiful You encourages you to seek the right professional help and care for you. This is where AMAHA comes in. AMAHA is a mental health care organization offering scientifically driven and evidence based high quality care through therapy, psychiatry, their community support, and self care app. Whether you're dealing with anxiety, depression, or any other severe condition, AMAHA has about 140 plus psychologists and psychiatrists working to support you. You can access therapy and psychiatry services online as well as in person through their centers in Bangalore, Delhi, and Mumbai. Beautiful You listeners get a special discount. Use the code BY50 to get 50% off your first session with AMAHA. Just download their app. It's called AMAHA, AMAHA, or visit their website to book your first session with AMAHA. And if you know someone who is struggling with mental health, share the love and the discount. Let's make mental health care accessible for everyone together. Invest in your mental health. You deserve it. Welcome to the podcast, Ally. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing really well. It's sunny here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, and things are looking up for today. Thanks for having me.
That's amazing. We have been wanting to do this episode for such a long time, and I'm so glad that it's finally happening. To kick off the episode, can you share a little bit about your journey with borderline personality disorder and how it inspired you to become a writer and a mental health advocate?
Yeah, so I always struggled with mental health. Part of me likes to say it's because I was bullied, but no, there was always that genetic predisposition to having mental illness. When I was 14, of course, you're becoming a teenager, and that's when you're really forming who you are, your ideals. I was really struggling at that time, and I just kind of felt like what I was experiencing was more than just, dare I say, the cookie cutter depression or the cookie cutter anxiety. It felt like so much more. The impulses that I had, the intense feelings that I was harboring just felt more than the cookie cutter mental illness. So I started doing research. Um, I did find personality disorders and BPD that really seemed to fit what I was living with, but I kept it to myself for a few years. I was young, didn't really know what to do with it. 15, 16, 17 passes on. I'm now in grade 11 psychology class, and we are learning about mood and personality disorders. My group was, what were we assigned? We were assigned histrionic personality disorder. No, I do not live with that, but that was the assigned personality disorder we were to research. So I was researching it. I thought, this kind of sounds like me, but not quite. A little bit sounds like me, but not quite. All right. So we're doing this presentation on HPD. We finish. The other group comes up. BPD, borderline personality. Oh, my ears pipe up because, I know that term. It came up on Google. This might be what I'm struggling with. So really listen in, girl. So pipe up, I listen. Check. Yep, I'm living with that symptom. Check. Yep, that's happened to me. Check. Yeah, I react in these ways. Oh, crap. This seems really, really accurate. What do I do with this now? So I sat on it. I was quite certain that I was living with this just because of, well, the 9 criterion from the DSM-5, that's Diagnostic Manual for Mental Health and Mental Illness. I looked like I was struggling with just about all of the 9 symptoms criterion for BPD. So wasn't quite sure what to do with it then. I was significantly struggling with mental illness, and at the time, didn't know it was BPD. Now, I do know it was BPD, but I sat on that for a while, and fast forward a couple more years, 18, 19, 20, boom, COVID hits. I have a very, very bad breakup. A part of BPD is having a favorite person, someone that you lose yourself in, envelop yourself in. You become them, you become one, a codependent relationship. That's what I had fallen into when I was actually it was 16, 17. When I was in that psychology class, I was in a relationship. So anyhow, fast forward a few years, that relationship ends. I lose myself completely, completely. Um, my void completely takes over my body. I'm filling it in every way, any and every way I can: food, sex, spending, speeding, gambling, self harm, you name it. I was just giving her because I didn't know what to do with myself. I'd lost my favorite person. So I thought I lost myself. It was a really bad time. Thankfully, I have a grandma, my mom, who cares very, very deeply about me and has always recognized that I have lived with mental illness, as it is a genetic predisposition. Her son lives with it. Her ex-husband lives with it. It's in our family. She knew. She knew it was time to get me help. I was not well. I was a shell of a person. I was not exuberant, bright Ally that you see now. I was really a shell of a person. I was not well. And I needed help. And I asked for help, and Nana got me the help. She set me up with a psychiatrist that she had an in with. Unfortunately, in Canada, there are not many physicians and psychiatrists that are just easily available. You have to go on wait lists. It's not great. If you have money, you're okay. So I was thankfully okay. Oh, my grandpa's calling me. um, but a lot of people, unfortunately, don't. They go on these wait lists. So my nana had an in with this clinic. Boom, got me in. I got to see the psychiatrist. Mind you, it was the midst of COVID. So I was not in person, it was over the phone. But that was the best we could get. So I went with it. We start talking about my story. I say, I think I'm living with BPD, but I'm not sure. It really seems to fit the equation. So she does her assessment. You are living with BPD. It completely validated everything I was thinking. It didn't scare me. I had no negative connotations to the diagnosis. It was just, holy moly, finally.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, this is giving me
Oh, yeah.
hope that
Yeah.
I'm not crazy, that there's not something seriously, deeply wrong with me. This is a valid medical condition that is not my fault. It is because of the trauma and the environment I grew up in and the genetic predisposition to this disorder. It gave me hope that, okay, I've got a name for this. I can now tailor my treatment and my recovery and help around that. So from there, I then went into a program in Winnipeg here called CODI, co-occurring disorders. It basically is for people that have co-occurring mental illness with addiction. I'm very open about my struggle with weed back in 2020. I had no self-control, and that was a way to numb out, so I used it. I was able in that program to learn DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, and that is one of the therapies that are proven to really help BPD. Really, to be honest with you, dialectical behavioral could really work for anybody. I think those skills are versatile and can work for anybody in the world. You don't have to have borderline. Everyone can use those skills. So I used those skills. I learned to cut back my use, not completely, but I did the best I could, and I cut it back at least in half. And doing that program just made me really step back, take a look in the mirror, and say, whoa, you happy with the way you're living? You happy the way that your father, your grandfather, and your grandfather's father has lived? Because this is genetic. No, I needed to make change. I looked at myself in the mirror, metaphorically, but I actually did look at myself in the mirror. And I said, you got to stop this now. You got to stop the cycle. You need to start talking about this. You need to take care of yourself and put yourself first, because nobody in your family did before you. You are the person to make the change. You are the beacon. You are the siren. And so I'm here today being a siren for borderline, starting the conversation and just starting that honest narrative about what it is to live with it. The shitty times, the great times, the middle times. But, I didn't really know how to tap into those middle times for a long time, the gray, as we would say, black, white, and the gray area. Gray area is very difficult for people with borderline to see and to live in, but once you're there, it's a very beautiful way of living. You can see the positive, the negative, and I think it's important, because living in polar opposites are very limiting. It's very limiting. So living in this gray area has taken quite a while, but I'm living in it, and I do sometimes tend to teeter to that black and white thinking, all or nothing, cherish or abhor. I'm now I'm now quoting poems in bloom. But yeah, I'm doing it, taking it one day at a time because that's all we can do. Every day is different.
Every day is different. That is very true. And I love how you narrated your story. That is honestly coming to that realization at 15 is that's a very young age, because now you're like, okay, I have this information and I think I might have this diagnosis, but what do I do with it? Who do I go to? It's such a confusing time because it's your personality that's building up. There are so many things that you're exposed to, that you're learning about. On top of that, if it's a mental health diagnosis, that's just a lot to take in. And yeah, no, I remember. I can relate because I was 15 when I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And
Yeah.
I know that it's a very young age to be diagnosed with any mental health condition and to be living with it and to even have a realization that, oh, I might be going through something like that, because not enough awareness is about, there's not enough awareness about it, not enough conversations
Mhm.
are happening. So it
Yeah.
makes it really hard to accept it, that
Yeah.
this is a process. Like you said, this is not your fault, this is because of the environment and the trauma that you went through. But because of lack of conversations, it's just so much harder to accept the conditions, so much harder to accept the diagnosis. And yeah, 15 is a very young age to realize that. And on top of that, you're 20 and you're being diagnosed with it. I'm glad that it didn't have any negative connotations for you.
Mhm.
And I'm glad that it gave you hope and that it gave you answers for it. But yeah, it can easily be turned into another direction for so many
Yes.
other people out there. Like, because at 20, you might feel like your life is over because it doesn't have a cure at the moment, so you might have to live with it for the rest of your life, which
Mhm.
sounds overwhelming. But yeah, no, insane. That's a lot to go through from a very young age. But I'm really glad that you're so open about your journey and starting conversations about BPD. to
Yeah.
so for the listeners who are new and who don't know what BPD is, could you tell us a bit about what borderline personality disorder is?
Yeah, so people tend to confuse it with BP, bipolar. They're two completely different things. Borderline is a personality disorder. Bipolar is a mood disorder. I like to say this, with borderline, you are on a roller coaster of emotions on a day-to-day basis. I can go from I'm happy, I'm chill, I'm content, to I'm really PO'd, I'm very angry, I'm very ragey, back down to I'm fine, I'm happy, oh, and now I'm turned on and I'm horny. Okay, and now I'm sad. Oh, okay, and now I'm really ragey again and I'm really upset, and now I'm content, and then I'm content for the rest of the day and I go to sleep and the cycle continues. So it's ever-changing emotions, you really can't prepare for them. The only way to combat that is through using your dialectical behavioral therapy skills and learning ways to ground yourself, being mindful. So, BPD, it's the roller coaster of emotions. It is that intense impulsivity, that impulse control. And why do I think that's such a big thing in borderline? Is we have this massive void. We've got this void that we want to fill and we don't know how to fill it. So we let our impulsive thoughts, things that we think we need, completely take over and fill the void, and they're not healthy for the most part. The most part, impulsivity can be really good in some aspects. I want to go. I want to do this. I'm doing it. If it's a good thing, if it's a bad thing, that's not great. But characterized by impulsive episodes, impulsive thinking, the roller coaster of emotions. Some people, most people do live with a confused or disturbed sense of self. Fortunately, I always really knew who I was. Um, Very confident in that. So I that is something I don't struggle with, but it is that deep-seated fear of abandonment, the people-pleasing tendencies, the hypersensitivity. It all sounds bad, but I'm going to add some good into it. We're also very intelligent, um, multifaceted people. So many people I have met with borderline are so talented. They are so different and so talented. And that's how I like to categorize myself. I feel very different from my peers. The way I think, the way my neural pathways are so different. So again, it is that instability of self, impulsivity, deep-seated fear of abandonment, um, disturbed sense of self, and I said that already. But where does it come from? It usually comes from a neglectful environment as a child, and or sexual abuse of some kind or some sort. Unfortunately, that did play a part in my story, and it did from a very, very young age at, 2, and
Wow.
it continued, into my teens and into my adulthood. Um, Something I have to forgive and forget and learn how to integrate that into myself and how, unpack how I feel about that. But aside from that, to really answer your question, I'm really going off on tangents here. It is a disorder that people often will say is a death sentence. If you look at the statistics, the average age of death is 27 for people with borderline. That is not a way you should be looking at it. It is not a death sentence. It's actually a superpower. I feel things so, so, so strongly. I am so multi talented. I'm just so interested in so many different areas of life. And quite frankly, I'm pretty good at the areas that I'm interested in. It can be managed. It can be managed, but it has to come from a belief in yourself. I had so many people over the years saying, "You're good, like you're good, you can do it, you can do it. Just be happy. You can." I hate that one. Just be happy. You can do it, you can do it. Okay, fine, I can have all that external encouragement, but it has to come from within myself to want to actually change, put in the work, and clock myself when I notice I'm doing things that aren't acceptable. But I put in the work, and that's what I'm doing. So I have yet to really solidify what my definition of BPD is without going through the rigmarole, but there you go.
Wonderful. That's very insightful, actually. So, what made you be a poet? Like, was it because of your diagnosis, or have you been a writer, a poet early on, like before your diagnosis?
Yeah, yeah, I've been a writer for as long as I can remember, actually. My grandma and I sit down and speak about this often. She likes to tell me, as young as 3 or 4, I would dictate stories to her that she would type on Microsoft Word. So I was always wordsy, wanted to talk, wanted to express myself.
Yeah.
So obviously, going through school, I really enjoyed writing. Didn't really do a ton of it in elementary, but I did really start when I was 14. Why? 14, that was a really difficult time for me. There was a lot of personal turmoil, family turmoil, also just raging hormones. 14-year-old girl. So, anyhow, I start high school. I meet this lovely English teacher that really helped me hone my writing skills and show me that I'm pretty good at it. So I really did start writing when I was 14 in high school. The English classes are pretty intense. So writing, writing, writing. So I did that. As I went on in high school, life happened. Thinking about BPD happened. And I started using my writing as a way to process and to let my void speak. So I've always been a wordsmith, but I have come to find I write to process trauma. I
Hmm.
write for catharsis, and my void is going to say whatever it's going to say. I'm not your typical poet. I won't sit down, give myself a prompt, and force myself to write a piece. Nope, nope. My inspiration strikes whenever or wherever. I'll tell you, there's a piece in A Generation of Sunflowers called The Aftermath of Coercion. It was written while I was on the toilet. Inspiration will spark anywhere. It just happens. I love pen and paper, though I am someone that I let my words flow off my thumbs onto my notes app. So I write whenever and wherever I can, though it's not forced. Whatever my void needs to say, will say and it will speak. So I hope that answered your question.
Mhm. Of course, yeah. That's wonderful. So, hmm, tell us a little bit about your books. I know I talked a little bit about in the introduction, but I would love to hear about your books from yourself,
Mhm.
about your first book, A Generation of Sunflowers, and the second book, Bloom.
Yeah, so my first baby, A Generation of Sunflowers, this was published February 19th, 2021. I was 20 years old.
Wow.
That shocks me that at 20, I
Yeah.
self-published a book. I didn't have any university writing courses under me. I had really no business doing it, but I did it. So, this book, I like to say this book was written, I was really unwell when this was written. This was right when I got my BPD diagnosis, which was September of 2020. 2020, I lost it all. So, September 2020, I get my diagnosis. I had written throughout that year with no intention of a book. I had just written to let my voice speak. But something came over me and I said, I want to share with my family and friends how it is to live with such a nagging, debilitating disorder because it really is.
Yeah.
And I decided to compile a, collection of poetry. It's a short collection. That's okay. It's very, very powerful. This came out, like I said, February of 2021. It was quite honestly to gut punch family and friends to show them what it is to live with trauma,
Hmm.
massive burdens, and serious mental health issues. And it did that. It gut punched them. But it did more than that. It also inspired them to tell me this needs to go into stores. This needs to be in the hands of strangers.
Yeah.
That yes, this is your story, but this narrative is probably shared amongst so many people worldwide. And I didn't know that. So I took the chance. I made an Etsy store. I took the chance. I, spoke to Chapters Indigo. That's the major book chain here in Canada. I decided to take a chance on myself, and I did. I did. The comments started rolling in from friends that one that really stuck with me was, "You really validated me going to therapy. Your book validated me taking the chance on myself, unpacking my trauma and going to therapy." That that really propelled my message and really showed me, okay, it's time to advocate, it's time to get loud about this, and it's time to own your work, Ellie. It really is. I was quite scared about when this first came out because it's so raw. It really, really is. This is an unfiltered narrative of someone living with major depression. And of course, borderline. But this book, I like to say, was written in my low, low lows. It really, really was. This was the Chronicles, a day to day of depression. Um, Bloom, on the other hand, came out in June of 2023. So it's not even a year old yet. Came out in June of 2023. Bloom was written in my highs, my lows, and my in between. As I talked about earlier, it was written in my gray area. Agos, I had no idea what the hell the gray area was for me. I just couldn't see it. It was black or white.
Okay.
Bloom, I was able to see the high, the low, and the in between. What really pushed me to get this book out at the time was my grandpa had had a stroke last year, April, and really developed very serious dementia. It really exacerbated his Alzheimer's. And I said, I got to get this book out before he is not able to read, comprehend, etc., etc. So I worked very hard to get this out in time. He's still living, he's good, but I wanted to get this out so he could see it. There are dedications to him in this book. There are dedications to my grandma in this book. And really, this second book was written for the mental health community, for the borderline community. The first book was written as just Ally Loyns, just someone. Bloom was written from author. I stepped into my power. And I said, "Oh, you're a writer. Oh, you're an author. You have an audience now. You actually have fans, and they're not your friends and family. They're
Mhm.
people in Australia. They're people in the States. They're people in the UK. Okay. You have a community listening to you. Use your platform for good, girl." So I did. I went in. The 4 sections of Bloom talk about our mind, heart, body, and soul. I compare them to the parts of a hibiscus flower.
Mhm.
Each book is structured around flowers. Sunflower, obviously, the generation of sunflowers, and the hibiscus in bloom. Why the hibiscus? I've always thought they were beautiful. My cat, particularly, really liked to stare at the hibiscus plant that we had in our house. We still have it. We had it for probably 7 or 8 years. It just keeps growing every year. It dies, comes back, dies, comes back. So I figured, I'm going to structure it around the hibiscus. Well, the hibiscus has some really interesting parts to it. It's got the top of it is called stigma, for one. The little bulby things that stick out of the hibiscus, that's called the stigma.
Mhm.
Well, what is so involved with mental illness? Stigma. I was like, hey, what an abstract way to show living with borderline. So my first section of Bloom is called Stigma, and it's for the mind. The stigma is the top of the hibiscus plant. What's the top of us? Our mind. What's the abstract? Stigma, societal stigma. So I really went in with Bloom. I don't really think I touched on what they're about. What they're about is, at least Agos was losing myself, yearning, not really knowing how to grieve, filling the void unhealthily, and just trying to let it speak. Though also coming back to myself at the end of the book, learning to accept myself again and to put my worth forward and um, amplify it more, honestly. Bloom Bloom is the joys in life. Bloom is living with borderline. Bloom is thanking the people who have got me here. Bloom is acknowledging the things that have kept me solid, my roots, my foundation, my soul. This book talks about everything, and I go in. I thought I went in with Agos. No, I go in with Bloom. This is The standalone, they're fine on their own, but it's better if you read them as a pair. You get a full rounded narrative reading both books, though each on their own is fine. I often will have Etsy customers come in and just buy this. This sells very often. People will come in and buy this book. A couple months later, they'll come in and get them. So, anyhow, these books are really just about self love, losing yourself, finding yourself, finding the things in life that brings you joy, acknowledging the things that don't, acknowledging those deep, dark parts of you that need more nourishment and love, and just being able to come back to yourself at the end of the day through self compassion. Self compassion is such a big, the C word, compassion. That is such a big word in my brand, in who I am, and the message that I'm trying to spread. We all need compassion because it's such a bleak bunk world if we don't have compassion for one another.
Oh yeah, 100% agreed. That's really wonderful. So I want to dive deeper into the books, but before that, do you? I'm assuming that as a published author, you must participate in a lot of book promotional events. Considering the nature of your, like the nature of your work as well as the nature of BPD, how challenging is it, or is it challenging for you to present your work in front of a larger audience? If it is challenging, how do you cope with it?
Oh no, I'm a performer through and through. I absolutely love to stand, give her, and shine my message, be it through my classical singing, because I am a classically trained musician. That's where I believe my chutzpah and my, I guess, how do I say it? People really like the way that I present my poems, the way I speak them and read them. I think that has to do with my musical training. So I am at heart a musician. Speaking, presenting myself is in my blood, it's in my bones. It invigorates me and exhilarates. It's exhilarating. So no, it really is not nerve-wracking for me at all. I believe in my why. That's what I keep telling authors that jump into my DMs and say, "How are you into stores? How are you doing so well? How are you so confident?" Because I believe in my why. I believe in my why and I believe in my purpose. And when you believe in those things, people are very attracted to that. People
Mhm.
are very attracted and almost enthralled with people who are so solid within themselves,
Absolutely.
especially someone that lives with a pretty severe mental illness. So I'm just forthcoming. What you see is what you get. I'm raw and real. That is my catchphrase. It's okay to be raw and real. You know, someone might not like what I have to say, and that's fine. But I've educated them on what BPD is. I
Right.
love doing book signings at Chapters Indigo. I've done 6 of them. I love doing book signings. Someone coming up to me, I'm introducing myself, giving them my spiel. "What is BPD?" they say. I think to myself, this you're just further telling me what I'm doing is good because you don't know what it is. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to spread the word. This is a valid medical condition. It is a debilitating mental illness, but it's not a death sentence and we can recover. So, it's really not an issue for me, to be honest.
So you being so raw and transformative, so writing, creating something that is this raw and transformative, as seen in your poetry collection, this involves getting really deep into your personal experiences. Can you share some of the challenges you faced in the process where you had to like go deeper into your process?
It's hard to not be pointed, and what I mean by that is not bringing names into it or not being super specific, though you kind of have to be specific. You can leave names out, but you kind of have to be specific. So, yeah, sometimes I get a little bit nervous about, "Ooh, should I share this? What are people gonna think?" Screw that. Just do it. Live your truth. I know my why and my purpose, and I'm not here to hold back. You know, actually, I'm taking a course, and one of the questions was, "Do you have any self-stigma?" I'd like to say no, but I do. I don't openly speak about being sexually abused. I still feel very shameful and embarrassed about that. And you'd think, but you talk so openly about living with pretty severe mental illness that's very stigmatized. Yeah, okay with that. I'm just not yet fully comfortable being like, yep, I'm part of the Me Too movement. One day I will, but I still have to coach myself into knowing that it's okay. It's not your fault.
Makes
So
sense.
yeah, it is difficult to talk about things that I'm not ready to yet,
Yeah.
but I'm doing my best. I hope I answered the question.
I can absolutely see that, and it's wonderful the work that you're doing. Absolutely love that for sure. So, what I want to understand is how did these two books, like writing these two books, contribute to your healing and understanding of your journey?
Did it bring perhaps any new insights or perspectives?
Yeah, it did. To be honest with you, writing Agos, as I said, was just a very dark time. It was very melancholic. I was very depressed. Couldn't really see a lot of good. When I wrote Bloom, I said to myself, babe, you got to start looking at a little bit more positive things. You need to start really embracing the temple, the vessel you were given, body, and value it. You need to love yourself. And I know that sounds so cliche and silly, but it's so important because if you don't feel at home with yourself, how the hell are you going to feel at home with anybody else? That sounds like RuPaul. If you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else? Can I get an amen up in here? Amen. Honestly. So I just knew that I needed to, it made me reflect. Agos made me reflect, like, how can I show myself the ways that I love myself? How
Mhm.
can I better practice self-care? So those insights came out of Agos, and I really tried to weave them into Bloom. How has it helped my healing? Well, I mean, the poetry just allows me to look at my traumatic experiences, my traumatic thoughts, even,
Mhm.
and dissect them transparently without judgment. I like to say I can be more transparent with the pen and paper than I can be with a therapist because the pen and paper doesn't judge, it doesn't give opinions, it's just there, you know? So it's been a very it's been an integral part of my healing, the poetry. I don't write for fun, I write to process
Mhm.
because living with borderline you can live in a disassociated state. It's a survival technique. It's just something that's ingrained in you. I've worked very hard to pull myself out of living in that disassociated state. Poetry pulls me out of that disassociated state. So it allows me to process. It's been a very big part of my healing. Yeah.
In your second book, there's a poem, A Love Letter to Myself, which is a very powerful
Yeah.
expression of self love. So, how has your relationship with yourself evolved, and how do you practice self love in your daily life?
Honestly, 2020, I lost myself, and there was a lot of promiscuity and sex. It was not great. I didn't value myself. I didn't respect my vessel, my temple, my mind, my body, or my soul.
Mhm.
And I just said to myself, you need to start respecting yourself and realizing your worth. So that poem was written because those are all things that I want to hear from someone else,
Mhm.
but I won't hear them from someone else. I'm going to hear them from myself because it starts with you. You need to feel at home with yourself first before you can feel at home with someone else. And it's taken a long time. It's taken, 23 years. I'm serious. I've had very serious body dysmorphia issues, eating disorders as well, sprinkled in there. It's taken a long time, but I've come to love myself. And I am Rubenesque. That means curvaceous. And that term actually, I say you are Rubenesque, a body exalted. The paintings, the Rubin paintings.
Mhm.
Here, I'll just pull up a photo so you know what I'm talking about. The term Rubenesque came from Rubin paintings. Rubin's paintings are of full-figured, curvaceous, nude women. It is beautiful. You've seen the work. I'm sure whoever's listening has even seen the work. Everyone knows what Rubin paintings are. And I saw myself as that beautiful, picturesque, curvaceous woman. And that's what I am. I'm Rubenesque. I'm not fat. I am Rubenesque. And I'm sexy. So, anyhow, that came from a deep place of self love. And I wrote that to myself because these are things I want to hear. And hell, no one's going to tell me them. I'm going to tell them to myself. So, Rubin paintings, just while we're on the topic here. Okay, here we go. See how there's those naked, curvaceous ladies?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're Rubenesque. At the time when these were painted, bodies like that were exalted. They were worshipped. They were praised. It was the golden standard. Where's that gone? Where's it gone? Society's told us that that's not acceptable,
Mm.
but it is
That's very
because
empowering.
everybody's beautiful. So
That is very
yeah,
true. So, looking back on your writing journey, how do you perceive your growth as a writer from the time you started to being featured in Deputy Literary Magazine's first edition?
yeah. Well, my editor of Agos, Angelina. God, I have so many A friends. Angelica Castellaneta, who was my editor of Agos, she taught me, or she, I guess, encouraged me to write with the five senses. So, touch, taste, smell, hear, seeing. I think I got all 5. Maybe I repeated. I don't know. But anyhow, she taught me to use those when I'm writing. You want to be able to really paint that beautiful picture where you can smell. You can smell what's being conveyed in the message. You can taste it. You can visualize it. For instance, I write a piece in Bloom, and I think it was called She Was Home All Along. And it's about being in a bathtub, about taking a bath in a tub. And the way I wrote that, I wanted my reader to feel as though they were in that warm bathtub, being engulfed by the water, feeling the heat and the buoyancy of being in water. She really just gave me that push right with the 5 senses. So I was able to do that in Bloom more so than I did in Agos. I do feel I need to strengthen my craft more, and I hope to pursue some university courses in journalism and/or writing poetry
Oh, wow. Okay.
when the time comes. Yeah, I just can't right now being a caregiver.
Sounds exciting, though. I hope you're able to do all of that. So we're coming
Yeah.
towards an end of the episode, but before we do that, is there anything that I missed out on that you would like to talk about?
To be honest with you, I think we're okay. We really covered what it means to live with borderline, what my work is about, what I'm trying to convey. Oh, actually, I did think of something I can mention. I currently am taking a peer supporter course to become certified. If you don't know what a peer supporter is, it's someone that has lived experience in addiction and or mental illness, um, and they are just there to give you support as someone with lived experience, non-judgmentally, just there, not as a professional, just as a peer. So I'm doing a course to become a certified peer supporter. I want to be able to learn the structure of how to give peer support ethically, obviously, because in time, I do want to create a borderline support group here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. There is not a lot of resources for us here in the city. It's highly stigmatized. People don't want to give that diagnosis of borderline, and hell, we're just short on physicians as it is and psychiatrists, so it's very difficult. I have the means to be able to start something, so I'm taking my course so I can peer lead, led by me, a BPD support group. I'm hoping to do that once a week here in Winnipeg. Probably won't happen until next year, but that is what I'm working towards.
Wow.
And ultimately, yes, I'm only 23 now. My goal by the time I am 30, I want to have created the BPD Society of Manitoba. There is nothing representing us here in the city. I am not joking. There
Mhm.
really is nothing. 2 programs with an extensive waitlist times, but it's not tailored to BPD at all. I just want to be there and show people that, yeah, it's hell to live with, but it can be integrated into something beautiful and channeled into something worthwhile. It's not a death sentence. And that's what I need to show people and tell people, because that's how you feel when you get your diagnosis. Oh shit, I have BPD. I'm done. I'm done. Society won't accept me. I won't be able to find love. I'm so scared of abandonment. No. No. Get rid of that. I want to show people you can heal and you can combat all of what I just said.
That's
So,
very noble.
initially, sorry, go ahead.
That's very noble. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so that's what I'm hoping to do. I think that's the way I'll end it is, mark my words, Ally Loyns will create a peer-led BPD support group here in Winnipeg, Canada, and eventually creating the BPD Society of Manitoba.
I wish you all the best with that, and I hope that you're able to achieve all of your goals sooner than later. Where can people find you?
Okay, you can find me on Instagram at Ally_author. If you are not in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, which a lot of the listeners probably aren't, you can go to my Etsy store, Gen of Sunflowers, to purchase Agos, Generation of Sunflowers, and or Bloom. Each purchase, you get a couple cute floral mental health stickers, and you get my business card bookmark with my Linktree QR code. So yeah, you can find me on Instagram. That's my main kind of profile and where I do a lot of my connections. If you want to buy my work and support me, check out Etsy, Gen of Sunflowers. But if you happen to be in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, you can make your way over to Chapters Indigo, St. Vital, Keniston Commons, or Polo Park Festival. But I do hope in time to get my work worldwide available. In person, you can buy in a store. So we're going to work for that.
Absolutely, yes. And that's very ambitious, and I hope that you're able to, again, achieve all of your goals sooner than later. Thank you so much for your time and energy, for being here, for sharing your journey. The work that you do is absolutely lovely and so courageous, and it takes a lot of like courage to be where you are and to be doing the work that you're doing. So I absolutely applaud you for that. Thank you so much for your time and to be on the podcast. For the listeners out there who made it through the end, thank you so much for listening. If you know the drill, if you're listening to this on Spotify, give this a 5-star review so it helps us reach out to other fellow listeners. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, then do comment down below what resonated with you the most from the episode. I'll be sharing all of Ally's social media networks in the show notes of the description. So do check her out. Do reach out to her if you have any questions regarding the episode, or just check her out. Check out her book. I read both of her books for this episode, and they were absolutely wonderful. I'm in love with her work. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. I'll see you guys in the next episode. I love you. Bye.